cause behind that?
Well, there are many, many ways to think of it, but historically, have governments ever faked incidents or incited incidents in order to get them into wars? Nations.
Do you think
has that happened historically?
I'm sure it has.
Yeah,
I don't think this is the case right here. I don't think that there was a conspiracy between Bush and Tony Blair to put these soldiers in as pawns so that we can jump into Iran. I think we're going to try to use other methods to stop their programs.
There's an admiral who asked that we use diplomatic methods to get out of it, and that's where I wish that we would. I mean, I wish everybody would exercise diplomacy and compromise, and sometimes you have to give something up in order to achieve something better, peace. Sometimes you have to do that, and it seems like it's those ideologies that are not being talked about enough. What would a diplomatic compromise be? What would a diplomatic summit be here?
It's very hard in America when anyone from the Mideast has been so demonized that no matter what, it's impossible for some people to believe that the Iranians in any way could ever do anything ethical in any capacity. That they've somehow been dehumanized to the point where they're not people who, they're just the enemy. They're terrorists.
We're not talking about the Iranian people. We're talking about their government, who essentially has total control over them. They essentially have zero say in that government.
That's how people see us, I hope, in the world.
That's right, our government, right? People, I hope people across the world don't think what George Bush is doing represents the American people, because the last election showed it does not.
But let me ask you this, like, what concerns me is that there's this environment now where we're almost more apt to trust our enemies than our allies, and that's very concerning to me.
But that is concerning when nearly everyone in this
Bush administration for that. They've completely annihilated all of our trust.
See, I trust our allies and I trust our government much more than I trust our enemies on the war on terror.
But would you say, Elizabeth, that you trust the Bush administration as much as you did when he first took office?
Will you admit?
You know what? In a time of war, I think you are in a position where you have to trust
Nearly everyone in this administration is under indictment or suspicion. Nearly every person, from Karl Rove to Rumsfeld to Gonzalez. What do you have to do to get impeached in this country? What do you have to do?
You know what you have to do. If you have to have Monica Lewinsky come into your office, that's what you have to do.
Let me tell you something. People will laugh at that incident. People will brush that off, and I'm going to be Monica, and I'm going to be discreet because your daughter's here. But let me tell you, while he was enjoying himself, there were things going on in this world. Namely, 3 times he could have had Osama bin Laden within his scope, and he was too busy to try to ask.
Wait a minute. Wait a second.
That is important.
I'm not sure that he was enjoying himself at that moment.
I'm sure he was doing nothing but enjoying himself.
No, I don't think so. I think Ken Starr.
The other guy was as bad. The other guy was as bad. He did this. That digresses from what the real issue is, and the issue is. But even you worded a war on terror. I think personally that is propaganda.
Exactly, Russiagate. Thank you.
I don't like the wording of it like that.
Because it makes people into evil and good.
I'm sorry, but the people who...
I thought the soldiers on the front line...
Johnny, whatever his name is, he's a bad guy. He's a very bad guy.
I'm not saying...
Explicitly, he wants to wipe Israel off the map. This guy is a bad guy.
Am I saying he's a good guy and I want him over for breakfast? No, I'm not. But I'm saying that in America, we are fed propaganda, and if you want to know what's happening in the world, go outside of the U.S. media, because it's owned by 4 corporations. One of them is this one. And you know what? Go outside of the country to find out what's going on in our own country, because it's frightening. It's frightening. And if you don't
think we're being brainwashed as a whole country, I think not.
I think democracy is threatened in a way it hasn't been in 200 years, and if America doesn't stand up, we're in big trouble.
If you don't stand up right now against Iran and implement tougher sanctions, we'll have a war here. If you want the war here, let's fight it on our own
Elizabeth to do is admit it was a mistake to go into Iraq. Just do that.
I don't see it as a mistake.
I know you
still don't see it as a mistake.
In a no-bid contract for 5 years, Halliburton, wait a second, $16 billion. You want to know why we'd go into Iran? For the money.
Listen.
That's why we would do it. And that's corrupt.
What is oil in this world? Oil is power. So if you want to turn that over to them and be fighting from a
We're the oldest democracy in the world. And that's something to be proud of. We're the oldest democracy in the world. And we're a democracy founded on capitalism. But capitalism, the definition is not, where we are right now is capitalism run amok. And there was an ideology in the early democracies that were about a lot more about community and a lot more about helping your neighborhood and your country. And now I feel like we're in a kind of an imperialistic stage. And that's not the ideologies of our forefathers. rosy democracy.
To clarify, in terms of this war, do I think we went in the right way? No, we could have done things a lot better. We should have gone in with more troops. There should have been, I'm not a military strategist,
but do you think Iraq had anything to do with 9/11, Elizabeth?
You know what? That's something that I struggle with.
Did Iraq have anything to do with blowing up the Twin Towers?
I believe that at the time, George Bush our president, was faced with a decision, and all the evidence stated that it did, and all the evidence that all the Democrats who voted for this war saw, and also believe that
all the cherry-picked evidence.
Okay, well, the evidence that they saw indicated that Iraq had a part in 9/11, and that they were plotting to use those weapons of mass destruction in
You still think this now?
Hang on. He had the choice to make the mistake and go in there, assuming that they did or that they didn't. Okay, I'd rather him make the mistake on the fact that yes, they had it, and at least we went in there.
Let me ask you one more thing. Do you think the government purposely misled the American people to believe that Iraq had something to do with 9/11?
No.
Yes, says the crowd.
Do you believe that the government had anything to do with the attack of 9/11? Do you believe in a conspiracy in terms of the attack of 9/11?
No, but I do believe that it is the first time in history that fire has ever melted steel. I do believe that it defies physics for the World Trade Center Tower 7, Building 7, which collapsed in on itself. It is impossible for a building to fall the way it fell without explosives being involved. World Trade Center 7. World Trader 1 and 2 got hit by planes. 7, miraculously, the first time in history, steel was melted by fire. It is physically impossible.
And who do you think is responsible for that?
I have no idea. But to say that we don't know that it imploded and it was an implosion and a demolition is beyond ignorant. Look at the films. Get a physics expert here from Yale, from Harvard. Pick the school. It defies reason.
Let's get one. Let's get one, because that is the unthinkable.
It is the unthinkable. But imagine if somebody could convince you of that, could prove it to you, Elizabeth. Just 7.
I don't think it would happen, but I would. If someone could sit here right now and prove that to me, I would.
Okay, we're going to call up Harvard and we're going to call up Yale, and we're going to ask somebody from physics to come and explain.
Wait a second, Bush went to Yale. How good could they be?
We'll go to Harvard. We'll go to Harvard. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back in America, land of the free, home of the brave. Peace out. We'll be right back.
Barbara Walters' hand-picked co-host, Rosie O'Donnell, is now suggesting the United States government was responsible for the September 11th attacks and willingly killed 3,000 Americans at the Twin Towers to protect George W. Bush's friends at Enron. The ABC host said this, quote, "Firefighters withdrawing from the area stated that the building was going to blow up. WTC-7 contained offices of the FBI, Department of Defense, and IRS, which contained prodigious amounts of corporate tax fraud, including Enron's." And on TV, Barbara Walters has allowed Rosie's radical rants to be broadcast front and center on Barbara's ABC show at the expense of herself and others.
Elizabeth, you have to stop. You have to stop. You can ask a question, but you can't just blather on your opinion.
And who defends Rosie's radical rants? Well, veteran journalist Barbara Walters. Take a look.
Rosie's opinions. I'm not going to say this every day.
Yeah, Rosie's opinions
are Rosie's opinions.
Right. But are Rosie's unhinged ravings causing the sad demise of a once great journalist? Here now is Matthew Felling, Media Director for the Center for Media and Public Affairs. Also with us, Steve Adebayo, MSNBC Media Analyst. I want to ask you first, Matthew Felling, about Barbara Walters. We've talked about how she had a great career, how she was a trailblazer, but you look at what she's doing now. You look at the fluff pieces for the Academy Awards. You look at the softball questions that she threw to Hugo Chavez, and then The View. The View is a train wreck where you've got Rosie O'Donnell suggesting that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is innocent, misstating facts left and right, and then coming out and suggesting that the United States government killed 3,000 of its own citizens to protect Enron. How sad has Barbara Walters become? Why is she allowing Rosie O'Donnell to destroy her once great reputation?
Yeah, and I grew up watching Barbara Walters, and I grew up thinking, wow, she's really got it all put together, and she's really committed to getting out the truth. And she is the grande dame of journalism. And I think it is time that we announce a Baba Wawa intervention. Everybody needs to stop and just come to her and say, Barbara, we understand what's happening, but you really need to check yourself. Get Hugh Downs, get John Stossel, get some of the celebrities from the Academy Awards specials. I mean, dig up Jack Palance. He'll set her straight. I mean, somebody just needs to sit her down and say, listen, we understand you are really hungry for relevance, and it's really tough to age on TV, and you're afraid of being phased out. But at the same time, look at what you're giving up. Rosie is off the reservation, and yes, the food fight, yes, the cluster bomb that is every morning's program is good for ratings, but also it's just, she used to be on a pedestal, and it just gets hatcheted at with every time Rosie O'Donnell says something about 9/11's conspiracies or the fillings in your teeth being like a mind-numbing government plot against you. I mean, it's gone too far at this point.
It really has. And Steve Adubato, to think that this is a lady who really became a superstar, a journalistic superstar, when she got in the middle and reported on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Now look at how low she's gone, where she's getting between Donald Trump and Rosie O'Donnell. It's really outrageous, isn't it?
You know, I have to tell you, Joe, it's disappointing as well, because it seems to me that while Barbara...